is up, everybody? I'm Vish Kumaran. This is the Vish Kumaran Show, and I'm reacting live to the 49ers' difficult loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, 44 to 23. So I actually enjoyed the format last time of the way I did this, where I talked about the 49ers offense, then the defense, then the special teams, then the coaching. I think it just helps me organize my thoughts better. So I just would like to start there. Obviously, just a couple of quick thoughts. The loss is somewhat devastating, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really affect the 49ers. The Seahawks are only a game ahead of them at the top of the NFC West. The Niners still have the head to head advantage given that they're 2-0 in the division. A lot can change, right? Next week, you go take care of business against the Rams. You're back to 500 and you're right there on the top of the division you're still in the driver's seat controlling your destiny in the division because you would be 3-0 in the division. So as disappointing as this loss was, I would like to say all of that before, because it's important to keep that perspective, because the Niners season is nowhere near done. There's a lot that needs to change, but we know that this is a Super Bowl caliber roster. And this is a team that's, when they're right and they're playing really well, capable of being one of the best teams in the NFL. They just played against one of the best teams in the NFL, and we're seeing there's still ways to go. But, excuse me, improvement is something that's a part of every NFL season. So before everybody, gets real mad, real upset, I do want to say all of that. But now let's talk about what actually happened in the game, right? Let's talk about the 49ers offense. And when we talk about the 49ers offense, of course, the conversation is going to be about Jimmy Garoppolo. So let's start with the quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo had a pretty good game. There's no other way to really say it, right? He had the one mistake that was really bad. You're a veteran quarterback, you finally get a chance after the special teams committed that false start. Jalen Moore got confused. He false started. You had to punt the ball away. Sky Moore makes the big mistake. He muffs the punt. You get the ball at, I think it was the Chiefs' 8 or 9 yard line. They were basically in the low red zone. You got to score a touchdown there. And unfortunately, the Niners defense or offense, did not score a touchdown, and they didn't even get any points because, the Chiefs brought zero coverage, all out blitz. I think they brought 7. Niners had 5 in to block, and then the back out on a route, and whoever was supposed to pick up the bag in man just came. So Garoppolo did have an opportunity. Again, we don't know the progression. We don't know how they teach the quarterback to look at things, but typically when you have that type of a setup, where you have a 2x2 and you have the back and you're anticipating to be hot, the back on the choice route coming across your face is typically what's the hot receiver. That's what usually happens on NFL Sundays. Whatever reason, Garoppolo did not have his eyes there at all. He was looking at, I think it was Ray McLeod and Kittle running some sort of concept combination with McLeod coming inside and Kittle going to the corner. Again, I watched all of these things in flow right there on one watch, so I'm not 100% sure. I can confirm these things, obviously, later during the week. But either way, I don't know what really happened. He threw a stupid interception in the red zone that should never happen. Besides that, he played well. He made a few really great throws. There was the throw to Kittle over the middle of the field. That was a great throw. He made a couple of really, really nice throws to Ayuk. There was one that he absolutely ripped right on the sideline through a tight window that, was called back because of a really bad holding penalty from Mike McGlinchey, who really had a rough game across the board. There's no other way to say it, but we'll get to Mike McGlinchey. The point is, Jimmy Garoppolo was not the reason the 49ers lost this game. And I think the conversation about Garoppolo is going to be interesting this week, right? Because I think we can all identify that he is not currently the issue on this team, but we can also see that when there are issues on this team and there's things not going as well, and we'll get to it, right? The defense ran up and down the field. The special teams was pretty horrible. And they couldn't run the football. Score situation did that. There's some limitations to what Garoppolo can do, but generally, I don't know how anybody could watch that game and say it's, a Garoppolo problem at this point. And I'm not, Garoppolo's biggest fan. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I thought the mistake today was bad. Like, you can't make that mistake in the red zone. He's played, football consistently for 5 or 6 years. He's played quarterback. You can't make a mistake like that. But it's tough for me to put the game on him. Next, I wanted to talk about the running backs, right? Christian McCaffrey made his much anticipated debut. I thought Christian McCaffrey looked fantastic in this game. I thought he looked explosive. He was setting up his blocks really, really well. He showed unbelievable quickness. He was if you want to say a guy with the ball in his hands had juice for the 49ers today, that was Christian McCaffrey. I thought he had the most burst, and he looked like the most dangerous player on the field with the ball in his hands. So I thought he played well. I thought he played really well. Jeff Wilson had a good game too. I mean, if you look at the Chiefs' game plan, it felt like Spags was contented with the 49ers being able to run the ball. The Niners were creating space. They were creating massive run lanes. Jeff Wilson was, the Red Sea was parting, and he was running right through it. But the Niners weren't able to stick to it because of, score situation, all these kinds of things. And it felt like the Chiefs were so comfortable that they could handle this run plan, this run game, no matter what, that it felt like they weren't really, overcommitted to stopping it. They weren't overextended. And so, even though the run game was working, it just was something that, the Chiefs didn't seem bothered by, which brings us to the receivers, right? Brandon Ayuk was awesome in this game. Brandon Ayuk has been awesome he's been awesome pretty much all season in terms of how he's played, but he's finally starting to produce the last couple games. He played outstanding. Deebo Samuel, I did not think Deebo played, that well. And Deebo playing well, playing not well, I think he's set such a high standard and expectation because of what a good player he is. Right now, I talked about this last week on my instant reaction, and I talked about it. By the way, I'll be on not next Monday, tomorrow with Rob Guerrera doing kind of a more in-depth breakdown of this game and talking through some of the bigger topics. And I'll have a better idea of these things then when I rewatch this game and hopefully get a chance to watch the film in the morning. But what I wanted to say about Deebo is right now it feels like the 49ers offense is just missing an explosive element to it. And what they're really missing and why they're missing this explosive element is that Deebo's not creating something out of nothing the way he did last year. And I think that's one of those things where we took it for granted the second half of last year, how special it was that you could just run, wide zone with Deebo. And Deebo is going to, you can toss it out to Deebo, and Deebo's so fast. He's going to beat linebackers to the edge. He's going to make it look easy. That's an explosive play. All right, we don't want to run the ball with Deebo. Fine. Let's throw a quick screen to Deebo. Let's run an end around to Deebo. And Deebo just would make play after play after play. Now, the one thing, he has not been doing that this year. I don't know if there's something wrong with him physically. I don't know what it is, but he does not look to me like the same Deebo Samuel that we saw last year. Maybe he is. Maybe it's just that teams are game planning so much for Deebo that, he's not able to get his game off the way he did last year. I'm not exactly 100% sure what's happening. I just know that there's something happening. To go to the tight ends, right? George Kittle had an awesome game. He played terrific, but a lot of it was too little, too late in this game. Really, he accumulated a lot of stats at the end. I think the biggest takeaway for me before I get to the offensive line with this receiving group is that they drop too many passes. And it's a consistent thing every week. How many big plays are left on the field, right? 3rd and 5, Chris Jones whoops McGlinchey around the edge. Garoppolo, releases it a hair early. He's got Chris Jones in his face, but he puts it on Kittle. Kittle drops it. First drive, low red zone, right? You're running a slant, tight press coverage. It's man-to-man, right? Garoppolo puts a good ball on Ayuk, kind of low and away. He gets both hands on it. He drops it. And these drops, right? Last week, it was Ray McCloud. Last week, it was Charlie Warner. These drops are big. They're crucial. They're constantly changing the game, right? The biggest drop today was 0 blitz again. First time in the game, Garoppolo finally knows where his hot is right off the 0 blitz. It's the running back on the rail route, right? And he throws an absolute dime to Jeff Wilson. Right over that linebacker. He drops it right on him. It's a beautiful throw. He drops it. So these drops are really what I think is the ultimate issue right now with the Niners offense. It's a lack of execution, but everybody's kind of playing well. That's the problem, right? Garoppolo's kind of playing well. It's tough to blame him, but this offense needs to find a way to score points. Right now, the issue with scoring points are holding penalties and drops and just mental errors, right? This offense just every time, right? Get a couple of good plays going. First down, there's a little bit of momentum, holding penalty, 1st and 20. 1st and 20 for this offense, drive killer. They got to be ahead of the sticks. They're not converting a 1st and 20, right? Or, offense is going real good, right? Offense is moving the ball. It's, 2nd and 6. They run the ball. Jeff Wilson gets tackled for a 2-yard loss. Now you're in 3rd and 8. Tough situation. And so they keep making these mistakes, and we're going to talk about it, right? Because I'm a big defender and a big fan of Shanahan, but I think that there's a lot of things and themes that we're seeing over the last 2 years that we have to have a conversation now. Does that mean I think we should fire Shanahan? No. Does that mean I think we should talk about, well, Shanahan should be on the hot seat? Not really. No. But I do think we need to have a conversation with the similarity in these issues that keep happening, that don't seem to be happening with some of the better teams in the NFL and some of the better coach teams in the NFL. My last thought on the 49ers offense before we move on is the offensive line, right? I see the chats all over it. They're talking about Mike McGlinchey. I think that it's at this point with Mike McGlinchey, it's not that he's particularly a bad player. I think he's a good player, but I think that there needs to be a different conversation with him, right? We talk about, this idea of mental toughness and, the ability to elevate yourself in biggest moments and all these kinds of things, right? We talk about all of these things in terms of sports all the time, right? And we talk about it in relation basically to the quarterback, mostly in football. Well, the quarterback choked, right? The quarterback is not ready for the moment, whatever. In the biggest games, big third down, big moments, whatever reason, Mike McGlinchey seems to tighten up. Whatever reason, he seems to tighten up. He seems to not be able to play his best football in the biggest moments, right? Big third down in the game. Everybody knows you're throwing the ball. That's the third down. Mike McGlinchey is going to get beaten, right? Big play in the game, right? Big third down. Chris Jones is in the defensive player of the year conversation. He's a dominant football player. He's going to dominate every offensive lineman he plays. But yeah, Mike McGlinchey, it looked like he had no chance. It looked like JV versus varsity, it's unbelievable to me. He's a guy that's on a contract year. We'll see what happens with his contract situation. He had a really rough game today. I thought the entire right side of the offensive line was shaky. I thought the left side of the offensive line played overall pretty well. Aaron Banks has had a good season, and Trent Williams looked pretty good for this being his first game back. But more or less, that's where I'm kind of at with the 49ers offense. I know there's going to be a lot of Mike McGlinchey. I'm going to take questions here in another 5-10 minutes so we can really talk through this McGlinchey stuff because I know he's a guy that Niners fans really want to get on. Before we get to the defense, I wanted to answer this. Frank and Beans, love the Office reference, by the way, my favorite show. But Frank and Beans says, yo, Vish, glad you're doing this now. I'm glad too. Thank you. Defense was horrendous. Not winning anything, giving up yards like that. Needed one big stop in the fourth quarter, couldn't get it. 19 Super Bowl all over again. Jimmy played fine. Yeah, so the last part of your statement, I agree. First part of your statement, I also agree. Defense played horrendous. But horrendous, excuse me. I don't know why I keep adding that ER. Horrendous. But I don't think this was like the 19 Super Bowl, and I think it was a different kind of game, right? I thought the defense played pretty well early, right? Big turnover on Mahomes. You force a 3 and out, and they kind of played well in the first half. This Chiefs offense is really good. Andy Reid is really brilliant, and Andy Reid is really brilliant, and Patrick Mahomes is there words to describe how good he is? I know, a lot of people get frustrated, but Andy Reid is like, and Patrick Mahomes is like, we're talking about a guy who's going to go down as maybe the best or one of the top 5 greatest players, quarterbacks in the NFL ever. Awesome player, right? The point I say when I'm saying that, it's a tough matchup for this defense. Now, it's the number one defense in the NFL. You expect them to play better. I do have a theory on one particular thing that I do want to get into, and it's a different conversation. So I'll be interested if you like it. But we'll have that conversation when we do talk about the 49ers defense here in 5 minutes. But Frank and Beans, appreciate the donation. And I definitely agree with you. I think there are some slight differences from the Super Bowl, though. Make It Work is really upset with me. He says, can you stop saying it's a Super Bowl caliber roster? No, it is a Super Bowl caliber roster. That is a true statement. It cannot be said anymore. Like, they have a Super Bowl caliber roster, but currently this is not a Super Bowl caliber team, right? That's the distinction. This team is capable of being a Super Bowl caliber team. That's why it's a Super Bowl caliber roster. There is Super Bowl talent on this roster. When you go down the list and say Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, Kittle, right? That's a lot of really good players. Christian McCaffrey. The reality is they are not playing at a Super Bowl level right now. There's still, games to be played. We'll see what happens. Before we get into the Niners defense, I did want to accept, and go through these comments as well. Flav says, agreed. Over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 bad interception. It happens. Defense gave up 400 passing yards and was embarrassed when it happens most. It's 90% on the D. It's 95% on the D. I mean, yes, I do think there was a momentum swing right there, right? If the Niners score a touchdown on that drive, they take a definitive lead right there. I think the score would have become 20-14. Instead, it stayed 14-13. Chiefs went all the way down the field. Niners got away, actually. There was some questionable penalties in this game against the Niners, especially defensive holding. Mooney Ward got a couple of really, really rough calls against him, but the Niners got away. I thought Pacheco went low on Bosa right on the tight edge of the tight end box. I think Mike Pereira said the same thing. But anyway, that, negated a penalty. Butker missed the kick. Nothing happened. But I do think that interception was a big moment in the game. But overall, Flav, I do agree with you. Garoppolo played well. Oops, I just unfavorited a comment that I meant to read. My fault. Here we go. Jagayo 56. We had a chance to come back, but the D on 3rd and 20. Yeah, that was the killer of the game. It was a great play call from Andy Reid, right, to get a screenplay to Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon cuts back against the grain of the defense. I do think there's a tackling issue that I'm going to get into and talk about right here in this next segment when I talk about the Niners defense. So just hold on to that thought for a second, but I agree with you, Jaguayo 56, and appreciate the donation. Flav says the Niners weren't winning even if Jimmy played perfect with that D today, passer rating of 100. He was fine minus the interception. Yeah, I would say that's definitely a fair assessment. I agree with that, Flav. Devin Smith says, if they're a Super Bowl roster, then what's the problem? Devin Smith, you're getting ahead of me. I think we're going to discuss that right here. Just bear with me for half a second, and we'll start to get into it. Frank Garcia, appreciate the donation as well. He says, bro, McGlinchey, like, come on already. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment. I feel the same way. Like, bro, McGlinchey, come on already. He's on a contract year, right? And playing offensive line is tough, right? We don't want to diminish that. It is a very tough thing to do. Being on an island versus Chris Jones is a ridiculously hard assignment. Chris Jones, like I mentioned, when we're going to talk about the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, right? It starts with Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, Chris Jones. I mean, Myles Garrett shouldn't be a part of that conversation because of where the Browns are, but Chris Jones is definitely right there. Nick Bosa is there. So why don't we go there? Why don't we talk about the San Francisco 49ers defense? Right? They had a rough game. They are the number 1 defense in the NFL. They gave up 528 yards of offense. Mahomes was clinical. It felt like the Chiefs could also really run the ball. It felt like they very much dominated the line of scrimmage, right? The Niners D-line, it got overwhelmed. And that was something I personally felt like I diminished. I made a mistake, right? When I talked about this game, I never talked about that matchup. That's my mistake. The Chiefs' offensive line is terrific. You go down the list, right? Zeus Brown, big left tackle, very good player. Joe Tooney, guy they paid a lot of money, one of the better guards in the NFL. Creed Humphreys, one of the best centers in the NFL. Trey Smith, Andy Reid stole him in the 6th round. He's a terrific right guard. And then Willie, the right tackle, I would say is kind of the weak link on the offensive line, but he's a pretty solid player. So the Chiefs' offensive line is very good. I talked about it a little bit with the Atlanta game in terms of missing Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw. The Chiefs' offensive line, the other thing other than being good is that they're big. And they were pushing guys like Kevin Givens, who were smaller made defensive linemen, a little bit up the field. And I think guys like they missed the size and girth that Kinlaw and Armstead had to offer. But that wasn't the problem with the Niners defense, right? That was one of the problems. Another issue, right, was that the defensive line didn't dominate. It was partially they were missing Armstead and Kinlaw. Bosa had a great sack in this game where he whooped Willie with that, I think it was a double-handed scissors, beat him right around the edge. Great move, great bend around the edge, brought Mahomes down. Terrific play. But overall, I would say he had somewhat a rough game. The Chiefs offense did a really good job messing with his eyes and not just letting him rush up the field, right? The Mecole Hardman play, Greg Olsen did a really good job of breaking it down where they kept Bosa unblocked and they basically outthought Bosa. So schematically, the Chiefs had a good plan for Nick Bosa. I thought, and I was talking to somebody who actually gave me this idea and pointed it out to me. I thought that those 2 neutral zone infraction penalties early on Nick Bosa kind of took him out of the game early, right? It kind of messed with his head. He was more worried about lining up than just getting up the field and rushing the passer. We haven't seen him being called on that back-to-back his entire career. Thought it was odd timing at the beginning of the game, and I thought it slowed him down in this game. Now, I don't think he'll say that it affected him. He's a true professional. He'll just say, I didn't play, the way Nick Bosa usually plays, because usually he dominates every game. Last time they played the Chiefs, Nick Bosa was the best football player on the field. That was not the case today. Chris Jones was the most dominant defensive player on the field today. But I do actually give him that as an excuse. I thought it was bizarre. The second one, first one I didn't think. Second one, I thought he clearly lined up in the neutral zone. But yeah, Niners defense overall though, right? You missing Dre Greenlaw. I thought Flanagan Fowles had a tough game replacing Dre Greenlaw. It was a tough game to replace him. Fred Warner, I don't think he's playing poorly by any means. I just think that the Niners defense is putting him in a lot of tough spots right now. And that's putting him, in kind of precarious spots. And, it wasn't a good game for either of the Wards. I think Jimmy Ward's going to play a lot better. I don't exactly like Jimmy Ward playing nickel, to be honest with you, but I understand why he's doing that. It is the best usage of the 49ers personnel to get their best 11 players on the field. Losing Diamador Lenore to injury also hurt. I don't think this Niners defensive coaching staff really trusts Ambry Thomas at this point. You can see the way they call the game when Ambry Thomas is playing. A lot of cover 2, play a lot of cover 2 to his side, which actually, when they called it, it was a really good call. The first play he came, it was a real good mix-up. Mahomes didn't know they were going to play cover 2. It was a really, really nice wrinkle from D'Amico, but I don't know if they trust Ambry Thomas at this point, so we'll have to see what happens with Diamador Lenore. Charvarius Ward, they really took advantage. Ward plays in phase, right? So he presses. He's looking to play in phase off the line of scrimmage. He likes to sit down a lot of routes. Well, they went at him by throwing back shoulder at him early, right? He plays in phase. He's playing for, he plays press in phase. So now you're going to throw the ball back shoulder. And then once they did that with him, they got him biting a little and playing like that. And then they hit him with the big ball to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. They knew him, right? He comes from the Chiefs. They knew how to attack him. They went after him. I don't think there's going to be teams really going after Ward like that. So I don't think that's a problem. Which brings me to the 2 49ers safeties. And I think both guys have been awesome so far this year. And they had a really awesome play where Gibson had a really, really good PBU where he read the concept, read Mahomes' eyes, made a great deflection. And then Hufanga, what an athletic, instinctive play to capture that interception. But I thought there were plays left on the field by both safeties, specifically Hufanga, who I don't want to sound like I'm critical of Hufanga because he is one of the 49ers' best players, and he's an absolute revelation, and he's playing awesome right now. But he has a little bit of an issue when he's playing in depth being able to run down ball carriers, meet them in the alley, and make that tackle, right? It's where, the running back, there's a hole, safety cuts him down in the alley, and it's a 12-yard gain. That's the difference between the 12-yard gain and, the 16, 20-yard touchdown. And I thought the Mecole Hardman touchdown run and the Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the Mecole Hardman first touchdown run and Clyde Edwards-Helaire touchdown run were two tackles from depth that Hufanga had to make. He missed both. You want your safety from the middle of the field to be able to make those tackles. I tweeted it. Those are the kinds of tackles that Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tartt used to make for this defense and not miss, that we took for granted. I think he'll definitely improve at it. I mean, Hufanga seems to be just a terrific football player, but I do think at this point that is a little bit of a concern. Overall, the 49ers defense played poorly. I thought the game was a little fast. I thought Mahomes and Reed, for being on the road, some of the things they did to control the pace of the game, control the snaps, control the tempo, all those things were just masterful to me. I thought they were playing on a different level from the 49ers offense. The way they controlled the game, controlled tempo, when they were aggressive, when they weren't aggressive. It felt like the Niners defense, they just took them out of their element and put them in the deep end, and they weren't ready for that. But overall, I'm not too concerned really about the long-term prospects. I think this is a special defense still, and I think that we're going to see it show out over the course of the season. Which brings me to the 49ers special teams. And usually I don't really talk about special teams, right? Deion Sanders has the infamous, you only talk about special teams when it's a big play or a boo-boo. The Niners special teams is a boo-boo right now, right? The only silver lining in the special teams is the kicking and punting game, right? Mitch Wishnowsky is having the season of his career. The reasons they extended him are valid. The reasons they drafted in the 4th round, I don't think are still valid, but whatever. He is playing outstanding. Robbie Gould has been as consistent as ever. The kickoff coverage is terrible. The kickoff returning is terrible. The punt returning from Ray McCloud, big punt return last week, but overall has not been that good. This special teams is an issue. And I think it's even more of an issue than last year because the Niners told us that Richard Hightower was a problem, so they went and got Brian Schneider. They told us that special teams is our only weakness, so we're going to go sign Oren Burks. We're going to go overpay for Ray McCloud because we think he's going to be a part of our offense and whatever. We're going to go get George Odom because he's an all-pro on special teams. Flop, flop, flop right now. Could change, right? Remember how we viewed Samson Ebukam 7 games into last year. So there's no permanent take on this today, right? It's fluid. It could change 2 weeks from now. It needs to change. But right now, the Niners special teams is a flop. So, which ultimately brings me to the man who's in complete control of this situation, Kyle Shanahan, right? Are there issues right now that go beyond Shanahan? I would say yeah. Like, I would say there's issues on this team that, you can't directly say, well, how is Shanahan supposed to control that? He's a professional doing his job. There's other guys that are professionals doing their job too. But there's patterns with this team that shouldn't exist, but seem to. And it starts with the discipline issue. This team is undisciplined, right? They make the same mistakes every week. They don't seem to they seem to make mistakes too at inopportune moments. I think that's the biggest thing, right? It's not just the mistake you're making, it's when you make a mistake. Big third down, drop, right? Red zone opportunity, interception. Got the ball in plus territory in field goal range, dumb sack. Got the ball in field goal range, got an opportunity, holding penalty, 1st and 20. Now you're playing for the field goal. So these mistakes have happened over the last 2 years, sans an 8-game stretch last year. This has been consistent with Kyle Shanahan. And I'm a huge Kyle Shanahan fan. In fact, every game that the Niners lose, we come into this comment section, you guys tell me that I'm, not critical enough of Kyle Shanahan. He's not doing everything. Today, I cannot do anything but be critical of him. He is the most powerful person in the Niners organization. Right now, the Niners seem to have an issue with discipline, and I think it stems from him, right? He sets the culture, he sets this tone for the building, everyone follows. And right now, for whatever reason, the tone and culture that he's setting is not leading to positive results on the football field. Now, I think that it's tough, right? We like to make sweeping declarations after the game we see immediately, but there's so much season left, so much football left that all of this can change. And that's where I'm kind of at with Shanahan. It's tough to make like, oh, it's tough to say, hey, Shanahan, you're the problem right now. But it's fair to point out the 49ers have problems with discipline, penalties, drops, execution, all these things that seem to stem from the head coach. Now, what he does to fix it, I think, is going to be the big conversation. Can he fix it is going to be the big conversation. He did it last week. The question is, can he do it this week as well? Or last year, excuse me. Man, I thought I was going to have a nice finish to that segment on Shanahan. Short, sweet, tell you he did it last year, and he might do it this year again. Who knows? We'll see. And instead, I said last week and this week. Tough. But now I just wanted to take your questions. Those are my quick thoughts on the game. I know it's a rough loss. I know a lot of people are very emotional. I'm pretty emotional right now, but for whatever reason, I'm coming across as if I'm calm. It was definitely frustrating to watch. I was pretty angry watching that game for sure. But I definitely, whatever you got to say, I'd love to talk it through with all of you. Have this be a little moment of 49ers therapy for all of us fans. Jagayo. Am I pronouncing that right? I think I am. Jagayo. If I'm not, please let me know. But appreciate the donation again. He said, versus great teams, our special teams has to be on. Absolutely, right? It's something I tweeted. One of the most underrated things about the Chiefs, right? Andy Reid teams are always extremely well coached top to bottom, right? He's the offensive genius. He's the mad scientist. They can have issues with clock management, but top to bottom, they have a really, really good, understanding of what they do and what they need to do to win games. That's why Andy Reid teams are so good in the regular season, never lose to teams they're supposed to lose, that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their special teams is phenomenal. Dave Tobe is one of the best special teams coordinators in the sport. I remember he had the elite special teams with Devin Hester in 2006. The special teams defense combination that took Lovie Smith and the Bears to the Super Bowl when they lost to the Colts. Devin Hester, of course, had that historic rookie season. Dave Tobe was the coordinator there. He is a remarkable special teams coordinator. He's had results everywhere he goes. And that's one of those things that the Chiefs seem to always have that makes an impact. Savory Movie asks a good question. Is Sam Womack that much worse than Ambry Thomas? Why is he not getting playing time? Or Dante Johnson instead of Ambry Thomas? So with Womack, right, it seems to be an issue with how aggressive he is and how well he's tackling and how physical he's playing. He's a rookie trying to learn how to play nickel and on the outside. Savory Movie, I don't think that it's about worse or better. It's just that, hey, he's a rookie. It takes time. Ambry Thomas, on the other hand, I don't know why he plays ahead of Dante Johnson, to be honest with you. The way they call the game with him in compared to Dante Johnson, to me, tells me they trust Dante Johnson a little more. We saw that last year. I thought Dante Johnson should have started in the NFC Championship game. I thought he played well enough against Green Bay. I do think some politics are a part of this. Ambry Thomas being a third-round pick. Dante Johnson's a guy who's been cut by the 49ers, 15 times? So I do think politics play into it. Everybody likes to have this impression that the NFL is the ultimate meritocracy. There is no politics in any of this. The reality of the situation is there's something political in all of this. Whether it makes a massive impact or not, it could be something. Luis R., appreciate the donation. Do you think we will be okay and make the playoffs? It's dark times for us Niners fans right now. I think the 49ers can be okay. I don't know if they will be okay. I think they can be okay because I think all these things, their issues are fixable to me. The problem is they don't seem to be getting fixed, right? The issues, we can all see them. We can all see the issues with the 49ers. We can see the issues with the penalties. We could see the issues with the drops. We could see the issues with the assignments, right? We expect this defense to not play this poorly ever again this season, right? That's our expectation as fans. So we should be okay. The question is, can they fix those things? And right now, I don't know if I can answer that question because we are seeing a pattern of play that goes on every single week that seems unchanging at this point. Making the playoffs, absolutely. They're still 2-0 in the division. They're still 3-4, right? You go beat the Rams and take care of business. You're 3-0 in the division. You're in the driver's seat and in control of your destiny, right? You just got to go beat Seattle, really, that one game. And I think John Chapman tweeted that they have only one team who currently has a winning record left on their schedule, and that team is the Seattle Seahawks, funnily enough. So I do think that, there's a lot of things that you can say that the Niners should be looking at. And this isn't the end of the season. This isn't dark times. But do those things get solved is the biggest question. Because right now, today, it's tough for me to say yes, because I thought they would get solved today. I thought the Niners would just play a cleaner football game. Now, I still pick the Chiefs to win. That's because I think the Chiefs are better than the Niners are today in how they're constructed. And the Chiefs also have Mahomes, who to me, I don't know. To me, Mahomes might be the best quarterback I've ever seen. I'll say that. I think Mahomes is that good. So when I put all of that together, for me, it's not like, oh my God, the Niners lost this game. That's not really the troubling thing. It's the repetition of the same errors and losing the games in the same exact way that has me here talking about this game in this way. Dave Sir says this game's a clear example why the QB is so important in our roster. It's not exactly. It kind of is. Mahomes is kind of a one of one, so it's tough to really compare anybody with Mahomes, right? What's Mahomes' weakness? He plays from the pocket about as good as you can play from the pocket. Sometimes can be a little impatient, can be a little sloppy, but overall plays as good as the pocket as you can. He's out. Maybe the best quarterback we've ever seen in terms of creativity outside of structure, creativity in terms of creating space, in terms of creating explosive plays, the way he delivers the ball, the number of different throws he makes, it's all like spectacular. It's tough. It's tough for me to compare any QB to Mahomes. I would feel that, I think I'll give you an example. I think that just Joe Burrow, for example, I think Joe Burrow is a top 6-7 quarterback in the NFL. If the Chiefs played the Bills or the Bengals, and it's nothing against Joe Burrow, and I know Joe Burrow went into Arrowhead and the Bengals beat the Chiefs last year and Mahomes played poorly, but 9 times out of 10, as good as I think Burrow is, I think that there would be a quarterback discrepancy in that matchup. And that's not anything against Burrow. That's just that Mahomes is that guy. He's that good. Luis R., thank you. I appreciate all of you. These conversations are really, really fun. For me, doing this content, it's all about how enjoyable it is. And for me, the enjoyable part about it is just talking football with all of you. So I really enjoy all of it. I really enjoy the interaction. So I appreciate all of you. Ryan, I want to say Keoler. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Apologies if I pronounced it wrong. I think it's Kyler. But he says, what is the split of play calling to execution errors regarding offensive struggles right now? 60-40. It's hard, right? Because I think that the lack of execution stems from a play calling issue, but then I think the play calling issue stems from a lack of execution. It's a circular problem, right? The Niners have to call the game and try to play the game a certain way because their coach calls the game as if he doesn't trust his quarterback. Now, the quarterback has been playing really well, so you would think the coach should trust the quarterback more, but the quarterback makes a couple mistakes a game that make you question why the coach would trust him, right? Last game, Jimmy Garoppolo played very well against the Atlanta Falcons. But guess what we all forgot and didn't talk about? Niners 2-minute drill, right? Down 21-14. You're in a 2-minute offense. You've had momentum in that second quarter, right? The 2 Ayuk touchdowns. Offense is moving the ball. 2-minute offense. It looks like you're going to score points and you're going to get the ball at half. You can get some momentum, put this game kind of in the driver's seat. And your quarterback in positive territory, so Atlanta territory, takes a stupid sack with no timeouts left, fumbles the ball too, puts you in kind of a 2nd and 20 situation, and right then and there, you're out of field goal range. You're kind of just playing for the end of the half because your offense can't really convert from there. Veteran quarterbacks should know better than taking that sack. It's a stupid play. It's the one play that can kill a drive there besides the turnover. But that's why you get Shanahan can't trust his quarterback fully because of those stupid errors, right? And we compound it this week. He played very well overall in this game. If you forget that one interception he threw, and then he had one throw that was into traffic in the red zone that was between Ayuk, Debo, three defenders, whatever, he played well in this game. But the interception, it's so egregious, right? Zero blitz, 7-on-5. You know you have to be hot. He's looking left, and he just kind of floats one up for grabs. If you're zero blitz and you didn't know where your hot was, let's say he didn't, right? Or let's say that was his hot. It didn't look open, whatever. Just chuck the ball out of bounds. What is so hard for a veteran quarterback, right? It's about managing mistakes, right? Okay, let's say they didn't have an answer for zero pressure. I think they did have an answer for zero pressure throughout this game, and even on that play, let's say they didn't, right? Part of being a veteran quarterback, being a guy who's in command and control of the offense is making that decision, understanding, hey, this is a negative play for the offense. Let me not compound this negative play by forcing an other mistake. Let's just live to see another down. Let me throw this ball straight into this ground. Let me chuck the ball out of bounds. He didn't do those things. And that's where the issue is, that they call the game a certain way and it has to be executed a certain way to win. But they're calling the game a certain way because of the execution. And it's circular. Because really right now, this offense and the way it's structured, the way Brandon Ayuk is playing, the way George Kittle is playing, the way Jimmy Garoppolo is throwing the ball, they should be way more aggressive on offense in terms of the way they call the game. They still don't seem to call the game like that because it feels like Shanahan isn't 100% sure still with Garoppolo because he knows those mistakes are coming. And as long as that trust is not there for Shanahan and Garoppolo, we're going to be having this conversation about the offense, it feels like, every week. And every week it's going to feel like, well, Shanahan did call a good game and he had a rhythm in there and he had a few plays that were just like so brilliant. And, Garoppolo really did play well. He threw the ball great. He made a couple of really, really great throws down the field and, into a tight window. But this offense just doesn't seem to execute and click. For me, that's where the issue lies. So this idea of play calling execution, it's circular. They execute a certain way, which causes the play calling to be a certain way, which then causes, MJ Mamba says if CMC stat, he played great today. It's kind of sucks because they had to go into kind of a 2-minute full drop back situation early. And that's kind of a tough spot to put a guy who's not, been on the team and been a part of the game plan, because he has to know protections and assignments and all that kind of stuff, and you're not huddling up, so Garoppolo can't really tell him what to do. So it kind of just took him out of the game. The situation did, but he played pretty well. He looked the part. Like, Christian McCaffrey looks every bit as special as I think he was. Like, he is not the issue here. Ooh. It's Keeler. Oh, my fault. I said Kyler. My mistake. Big Man City says it's so obvious Jimmy limits Shanahan. I think that he does, but at the same time, I think that at some point Shanahan is going to have to trust himself and trust his defense or offense, right? It can't be so conservative. Try to win the game with my defense. You got to score touchdowns to beat Patrick Mahomes. He was so contented going to that red zone and kicking field goals. And it puts you in a bad situation because it feels like, besides that one game against New Orleans in 2019, that Shanahan was just absolutely in his bag. It was misdirection this way, throwback this way, Emmanuel Sanders to Raheem Mostert, run the ball this way. It felt like, okay, I know my defense isn't going to be able to hold up and score points. Feels like every game he's shocked if his defense plays poorly, right? It's not like, oh, we're going to come into this game with an intent to score. It felt like the game plan today was, let's try to play clock management. Let's try to play the field goal game, get points, and our defense is going to hold Mahomes. Well, Mahomes is pretty special. It's very hard to hold him. And I think the most frustrating thing for me as a fan watching this game, to be honest with you, not to go there, because I know it's like a bad thing to say for all of us as fans, but the most frustrating thing every time I watch Patrick Mahomes do something against the 49ers is the fact that they didn't scout him. I know most people didn't think Mahomes was regarded that way. But most people aren't paid a lot of money to make these kinds of decisions, right? Andy Reid viewed Mahomes that way. Bruce Arians viewed Mahomes that way. Sean Payton viewed Mahomes that way. It felt like to these brilliant play callers, they didn't seem to care about what the public perception of Mahomes was before that draft. They saw it. They saw it, whatever that it was. And now you could say only Kansas City, he would have reached that status because of Andy Reid, Kelsey, Tyreek Hill. But he had the greatest quarterbacks, one of the greatest quarterback seasons ever in his first year starting. So I don't know. Maybe I think he would have been great no matter what he would have done. But yeah. And that brings us right here. Keen58 says, if Kyle Shanahan drafted Mahomes, would Mahomes be the player he is today? If not, are you concerned about Shanahan's future? I think he would be the player he is today because I think Mahomes is that special. But I don't know if Shanahan would be able to do those things for Mahomes because to me, my read on the way Shanahan views quarterbacks, and he said it before, is that you want to see them do translatable things to your system, right? And Mahomes did zero translatable things to Shanahan's system while playing in the air raid, right? The air raid is fully shotgun. Footwork's not that sophisticated. We know that Shanahan's offense is all about, footwork, tying the feet into the eyes with the quarterback. That's how he wants to call his offense. The feet tells you where to go, the timing of everything. Mahomes plays with great timing, but it's not, timing based on his feet exactly, though everything about Mahomes is great. My concern about Lance, and it's not really relevant to the conversation, I guess, today, but I guess I can go there since you asked it. My biggest concern with Trey Lance and really Shanahan overall is I don't know what happened with Trey Lance last year. Look, I'm not there, right? I'm not covering this team. I'm not credentialed. I know that credentialed people, non-credentialed people aren't supposed to have an opinion. So take my opinion with a grain of salt. But I don't watch this every day. My opportunities to watch this are the same time as you guys. We watch it together. We get to watch the preseason together. We get to watch the regular season together. And my issue watching Trey Lance this year is when I went back and watched it and I talked to, some people who might know a little bit more than me and might be able to educate me. It felt like he didn't show really major growth from sitting on the sideline where, now last year he would see things, but he would hesitate. Now he wasn't hesitating. He was cutting it loose. No, that wasn't the case in the little time he played in between the preseason and the regular season. There was so much refinement. So my concern with Lance is not really a Lance issue. It's just that I don't really know what Shanahan's doing to make Lance better. I know he makes him better from how he calls a game, I think at least. Because sometimes he doesn't call the game. I don't know if he's 100% comfortable calling a game for Trey Lance yet. But yeah, that I know that point is a little bit more for next year. But Keen, because you asked the question, I guess we could go there. Guys, just a couple more questions. I know that the Sunday night game is very crappy today, but I still appreciate all of you joining. It's really nice of all of you. Enjoy the discourse as always. I do want to watch a little bit of the Sunday night game, so I think I'll take a couple more questions here and call it. So if you got a question, throw it into the chat like right now. And Sergio Solario has it right? That was the point. That was the goal, right? That was the goal. But I look at how this team has played throughout this season. There's so many things around the quarterback that we thought would be so much more solidified. And it isn't. I can't. Disciple Jones says the Bills beat the Chiefs. You can't compare those two games, right? What your approach and plan is to play the Bills is so different because the Josh Allen factor skews how you call the game, right? Mahomes, Andy Reid, no matter who they play, but when they play Garoppolo or Shanahan, they're not scared of that offense really exploding on them and getting away from them. You're scared of that a little bit more with Allen and of course that Bills offense. So the Mahomes and them will play a little bit more conservative against the Bills because they don't want to make those mistakes. Against the Niners, right? Mahomes made those mistakes. It didn't matter. They outclassed the Niners. They didn't belong on the same field. East Coast Niners has the right attitude, right? Long season ahead. You can win the division. Division is right there. Still driver's seat, 2-0 in the division. Cards will be tough. I think the topics that we just talked about are a little bit more concerning when you say, well, we think this team should be the best team in the NFC. We think this team should win the NFC. We think this team should go to the Super Bowl. When you look at the roster and you start talking about those things, yeah, this is not that caliber of a team right now. They have the opportunity to be. They Did anybody else see that? Some little white thing floating by me. Anyway, besides the point. But they have the opportunity to be that. Right now, they aren't that. One last question, guys. I'm going to go through the comments right now and try and find one last question. So if you got one, throw it in the chat right now. Yeah, I saw that too. It wasn't a bug though. My house is bug free. Let's see. Kev F says, how many seasons should we give Shanahan? I don't know if it's like a seasons type thing. You kind of have a feel for it. I think right now things are kind of fine with Shanahan, right? Like the last 3 years have been pretty good. The first 2 years were rough, but he had to kind of rebuild something that was rough, and he got a clean slate to do it. I think for me, the one thing is that I know Shanahan went up to draft a quarterback, and I just want to see him get a year with that quarterback. And look, I know I like Shanahan more than other 49ers fans. I know that, on the side of Shanahan versus, other things, I'm biased towards Shanahan. So I want to preface everything I say with like I have an opinion, but I'm also clouded with judgment and fandom, all of these things, but that's how I look at it personally. And that should have been the last question, but there was one question that I did want to answer. Unlimited Joker asks, "Do you think McGlinchey stays with the team after this season?" I do think he does. He just feels like a player that the Niners would keep, wouldn't they? I don't know if he has that much value on another team. He's very much a fit for this offense. I mean, a lot of teams run this offense. He's a good run blocker in this offense. I don't know. They seem to really, really like him. His kind of arc on the 49ers is one of the weirdest things, right? After 2019, it felt like they were ready to crown him. He was the next Joe Staley. They made him a captain, all these things. Next thing you know, in 21 and 22, he's not a captain after a rough 2020 season. I'm not sure, but he just feels like the kind of player that they would keep because he fits the system. Oh man, there's so many good questions coming in here. I really do have to go. I appreciate all the questions because there's so many things that I want to talk about with you guys in this comment section. I definitely will stream a little bit more during the week, so hopefully we can have that discourse. But I really appreciate all of you joining. It was obviously a rough loss to stomach with the 49ers, especially mixed in with the excitement of acquiring Christian McCaffrey this week, but we know that there's a lot more perspective to it, and where the Niners are has a little bit more perspective. I kind of gave you my quick thoughts. I will be live tomorrow, obviously, with Rob Guerrera, I think at 1 Eastern, 12 Central, 10 Pacific, to do our show that we started doing last week. That's hopefully a little bit better breakdown of what happened in this game. Hopefully I have a better idea of that by that time. If I don't, well then yeah, but tune in there. It's on the Niners Nation network. But again, I appreciate all of you for joining. I'll try to stream during the week so we can have these conversations more. But Big Man City says, when is my next live, right? It's Monday on Niners Nation, and then I think I'll go live Tuesday or Wednesday, depending. We'll see. We'll see. Everything is real fluid with my schedule right now. So we'll see. But I appreciate all the support. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care of yourselves. The Niners hopefully will get a quick. All right, fine, Captain Stubbing. Ask your question. You got 4 minutes. Yeah, you got 1 minute right here. Ask your question. I'll give it to you. All right, Captain, come on. Fish says, thanks, Vish. I appreciate that. Fish to fish. All right, Captain Stubbing. That was some next level baiting from you. Oh, here we go. Debo always getting the ball in the backfield. Defense is keying on him. Yeah, absolutely. Defenses are keying on him. Debo Samuel just had a historic season last year. But I also don't think Debo's creating something about from nothing nearly as well as he's done maybe in years past. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I don't think it's really fair to make any sort of blanket statement right now. He's still Debo Samuel, but he has not been as dominant maybe as all of us hoped and all of us know he can be. We'll see how that goes. But thank you for the question, Captain Stubbing. Again, I'll be back so we can conversate more about this. This is always fun. But everybody have a great rest of your day. Don't take the Niners loss too hard. There's still a lot of good things going on in life, and I'll see you all next time.